I'm delighted to welcome here today Giles Cummings, who's the founder and CEO of FutureNet, who were the winners of the May Virtual Event Awards. FutureNet World 2021 is a global event for the telecoms industry, and it's now in its third year. It was run over two half days with 60 speakers and 27 sessions, and the event attracted an audience of 830 live attendees from 83 countries. Giles, can you tell us a bit more about the event, how it came about and how it's developed?
Yeah, sure. FutureNet World was conceived nearly 4 years ago now. So, I mean, my background is, eons in the events industry and working for some of the major organizers. And I decided to do my own thing back in 2018 and launch FutureNet World. And I felt, it was a good time to launch an event for the telecoms industry. The industry was, I thought, an interesting point in time, bit of a tipping point, and there was an opportunity to introduce something that was a bit different to some of the other events out there. So I launched FutureNet World, and we ran it as a physical event for the first time in March 2019 in London, and it was really well received. So really encouraged by that. We had 200 odd people coming together from all over the world, and over 2 days, and had a really fantastic launch event. And we planned our second edition for March last year, which of course didn't happen. Initially postponing it to September with the hope that things might sort themselves out by then. And of course, it became quite quickly very clear that that wasn't going to happen. So we switched to a virtual event in September and ran our first virtual event, which again was really well received, massive learning curve for us and the industry, actually, because for a lot of our partners and sponsors, this was their first experience of virtual events. So we kind of went on that journey together, and we took a lot from that in the way of learnings, which we obviously put into our planning for the third edition. And we decided to run the third edition 6 months later in March, rather April this year, which is back into our traditional Q1/Q2 slot. And
quite a short lead time between the two events then.
Yeah, it was quite ambitious, but we decided it was the right thing to do because the timing is quite key. For us, the second half of the year is quite busy with other stuff happening. We knew that Mobile World Congress, which is the biggest single event for our industry, wasn't going to be taking place in its usual March slot. So there was a great opportunity to kind of jump in, and the calendar was a bit clearer for us. So we thought it was worth taking that risk, and it paid off. So what we decided to do for the second virtual event was really, as I say, take all the learnings from our first event into our planning, and what didn't work quite clearly for us, and I think for most other people doing virtual events right now, is that the exhibition aspect didn't work particularly well for us. Yeah. And we decided in consultation with our partners to drop that completely.
And how does that go down, and have implications on revenue not having exhibitors?
Not really. I mean, the exhibition, whilst it's a big part of the overall experience, for us, it's a small part of the revenue. And, the decision was, as I said, taken in consultation with our partners, with our sponsors, and they, unanimously agreed. I mean, what we found out and they found out, and everyone else doing virtual events, I think, has found out that, one thing is very clear. The effort required to put on a virtual event is probably, 4, maybe 5 times the effort required to put on a traditional physical event. And, that's for them as well as us. So, if you can imagine, one of our sponsors described it as really building a website, from scratch. And that takes a lot of time, resource to do that. And, when it's, I think, not being well received, not well attended. I think, what people are coming to our events for is the content and the engagement with that content. And that's what we decided to focus on for April. So you know, the networking aspect again is very, very tough for virtual events. I mean, everyone is finding that, and that's not because the technology isn't there. The technology is there. The platforms, you know, can offer brilliant networking and facilitate the networking. What's missing is the will. So without the will, it's not going to happen. So we decided to really center our attention around the content for our April event and really driving engagement with that content. And that was really well received by our sponsors.
I know you moved platform to Swapcard. I mean, how did you go about evaluating? I mean, there are so many platforms out there.
Yeah.
How did you decide which one was right for you, and were you happy with the decision?
Yeah. Well, we spent a lot of time looking at this first time round and evaluated, you know, quite a number of different platforms. I mean, I had demos with various platforms, and you're right. I mean, even back in summer last year, there were dozens and dozens of different platforms, and people were popping up all over the place, you know, with new platforms. Everyone was trying to, you know, grab some of the action, and it was quite difficult to sort of navigate that. I mean, I'm a member of a WhatsApp group, which is a load of media owners, entrepreneurs that you know, Claire, and that I found quite useful because we kind of bounced off each other and swap notes. So that was helpful. And
the community,
I mean,
actually, which has been created out of this with event professionals, has been super helpful, hasn't it? And it's something that's new and you can see going forward. Yeah,
it has. It's been really refreshing because, you know, once upon a time we were all in direct competition and very guarded, and now I think there's a real kind of, you know, we're all in this together and, you know, supporting one another, and it's been really, really refreshing actually. So we actually, you know, we selected our platform for our first virtual event and thought we made a really good choice. You know, it looked great. It was very versatile. It did what we wanted, which was, you know, one of the things that we wanted to be able to do was to brand it and for it to be quite tailored to FutureNet World and allow our sponsors to brand it well. It also offered all the usual bells and whistles, and I think what we didn't perhaps expect or anticipate was, you know, we decided to go with a managed service. So effectively, you know, they were looking after everything. And what became quite clear was their kind of the way they moved and the speed they moved and the timetable they were looking to work on didn't map onto ours. So everything was really last minute. And I think, you know, what we found, and loads of other people have found the same, was, you know, this particular company has taken on far too much. They were struggling to, you know, serve their customers properly. Everything was last minute. It required so much chasing and, you know, resource from our side. And it was a nightmare.
Sounds stressful. Sounds really stressful.
Yeah. I mean, on the day, you know, no one would know all the problems we'd had because it actually went pretty well. But I didn't want to repeat that. So we decided, you know, quite quickly, we certainly weren't going to go with these guys. And we decided in the end to go with Swapcards. We decided to do it ourselves. So took the self-serve option and actually thought they were really good Swapcards. So I've heard, you know, some horror stories about Swapcards like others in terms of response times. But, you know, any questions we had, we got answers to really quickly. And I think because we were very clear in terms of what we wanted from the event, which, you know, didn't require lots of the bells and whistles, you know, we were able to do things in a way that, you know, we were comfortable with, timelines we were comfortable with. Our sponsors loved it, you know, and many of them were familiar with the platform, and I think that helps. That helps enormously. They were comfortable with it. They were able to go into the platform and, you know, upload information rather than, you know, us doing that for them or a third party doing that for them. So it was much easier in many, many ways, and we were delighted actually. So we're using them again.
Good. You mentioned earlier the sort of engagement and networking side. I mean, how did you deliver on that?
So, yeah, what we decided was the networking that you kind of imagine from the virtual events, where everyone has the opportunity to message one another and set up meetings and, you know, go into the platform and do video calls and stuff. Well, we didn't see much interest in that in our first virtual event, despite the fact it was there, it was being offered, it was being pushed, and it was available. So we decided to pay, you know, more attention to, I suppose, more facilitated networking. So we went down the road of introducing a number of invite-only roundtables alongside the main conference agenda, and that worked really well because that was really good for our sponsors, because they were able to select the people they were keen to invite to these sessions. Obviously, the sessions themselves were really well received because they were highly interactive. So smaller groups, between 8 and 12 people, and you know, we did it in an environment they were comfortable with. So we weren't publishing anything outside of the sessions. We weren't recording the sessions. So, you know, what was said kind of remained in those 4 virtual walls, and everyone was, you know, really pleased to have the opportunity to share information, exchange knowledge, and they worked really, really well. So I suppose that was our kind of efforts towards facilitated networking. As I say, you know, for us, the big piece was the content and the engagement with that content. And you know what was, I suppose, one of the most interesting things from our experience in September was, you know, we stayed very close to our sponsors because, as I say, we were on this journey together, and they were open and honest as we were. You know, we were all learning, feeling our way, and they went into, you know, these first events. They were starting to do virtual events last year with probably the same kind of objectives, same aspirations as they would do at an in-person event, and they have now learned quite quickly that they're completely different. So their kind of ambitions and objectives with virtual events have changed enormously. And for us, certainly, in most cases, you know, it's about the content, it's about the messaging, it's about the thought leadership, and it's about wrapping that around an extended campaign digitally. And that's really, as I say, what we focused on, and that's what they really liked. So
when you say extended campaign, is that in the build-up and post-event? Yeah,
exactly that. Exactly that. So we would be running, you know, a load of editorial in advance of the event. We'd do interviews with speakers, we'd do podcasts, webinars and such. And afterwards, then everything obviously is recorded. So, you know, that asset is available. And, you know, both we and our partners really, you know, leveraged that and made sure that that had an extended life beyond the 2 days of the event. So, you know, it's been a really interesting time for us, you know, learning ourselves and for our partners learning, and, as I say, coming on this journey together.
The facts and figures which you provided in your entry for the awards were really impressive, and it was actually great to get an entry with so much data and stats. But you obviously have a very strong relationship with your sponsors, and it's really worked for you as a commercial event. Yeah,
I think, you know, one of the things I was obviously what I was keen to do when I set this up was, you know, be totally honest and transparent. And that's not to say you aren't when you're working for, you know, bigger companies, but because you're focused on one, in my case, one single event initially, and then a kind of a community plan based around a single kind of topic and theme, it allows you to develop a much deeper relationship with your customers in many ways, and your partners. And I think, you know, the fact that we all went on this learning journey together, it kind of helped to develop a real kind of feeling of trust, mutual trust. So yeah, there is honesty. And in terms of the stats, you know, we were delighted because, you know, what we were very clear about in the run up to the event was, you know, our plan was such that, you know, we were looking at real, you know, efforts around the engagement with the content. We ditched the exhibition. You know, we're paying less attention to facilitating the networking in the usual way, and introducing this more kind of structured networking, and for them to kind of understand, you know, how well this has worked, rather than anecdotal stuff and perhaps stuff that comes out of, you know, sales leads and pipelines further down the line. They obviously need stats and information, so we were quite keen to put that together, you know, for them anyway. And you know, what we did track quite carefully was the engagement with the content. So, you know, we could see a real shift, and, you know, that's not to say we weren't quite pleased with how September went, but we did see a real step up in April. And, you know, what was really pleasing is that, you know, we had over 850 odd people tuning in and watching it live. And on average, they were staying on for 7 sessions, or just over 7 sessions, which is very, very good, actually, and really kind of, I suppose, is a bit of a kind of a rubber stamp on our plan, if you like.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a testimony to really strong content, isn't it?
Yeah.
People are not going to stay unless you've got really interesting things going on.
Yeah. And you know, we also were quite careful about how we designed the agenda. You know, one of the things that I was quite keen to do was really, you know, make sure that it felt like a live event. So rather than, you know, watching a series of videos being played back and it was quite one-dimensional, you know, we really wanted to create that feeling of a live event. So all of the panels were run live, for example. We kind of created this studio-based experience. So after each of the sessions, we were going back to the studio for comments. You know, we had, you know, 6 themes over the 2 days, and at the end of each theme, we had a section of the agenda where we brought analysts together to kind of have a chat about how they felt those sessions went, highlights for them. They brought the audience in terms of, you know, questions from the audience that hadn't already been picked up. We ran polls. So, you know, we're really trying to engage the audience well in those sorts of ways. So coupled with, obviously, you know, the speakers themselves and the topics and the content, I think that really helped to facilitate that engagement.
You mentioned the word community earlier, which is very much the sort of buzzword, I think, in the industry at the moment. Everyone's looking at creating communities and looking at ways to actually monetize them sort of over and above events. Is that something which you are looking at, or are you still focusing very much on the events?
Yeah, well, yes and no. I mean, we've, you know, one of the silver linings of this whole nightmare that we've been living through for the last 15 months has been that, you know, our business has come through this quite well, thankfully. You know, what it probably has done is given us a bit of a nudge into thinking about what we do digitally above and beyond the event itself, which is something that you know, we may not have moved into as quickly as we have. So we've developed kind of plans around marketing solutions for our partners, first and foremost, and engaging our community through things like a new product we've launched is something called Industry Insights, which are a 4-week, month-long campaigns around a specific topic that combines sort of editorial content with webinars, podcasts, roundtables, and such. And that's been a really good way to engage our community. It's also allowed us to, you know, drive revenue. So it's something that obviously we monetize. And it fits quite neatly into our plans around our main product being the events. So, you know, they feed into and come out of the event. So yeah, for us, the whole community aspect, and certainly, you know, doing more in terms of campaign-based marketing solutions has been a real plus for us and has been really well received.
So what does the future look like in terms of the actual event? Virtual, hybrid, live?
That's a really good question.
It's so hard, isn't it?
I'd love to know the answer. Yeah, I mean, what we're doing is we're planning, relatively short term. So we have a virtual event that we're planning. So we're launching a regional event for the Asian market in October, which will be 100% virtual. So that we've already committed to that, and we've announced our dates for next April for FutureNet World. But at the moment, we haven't committed to what that event is going to look like. It's a crystal ball at the moment, quite honestly, I think. And what I'm quite comfortable with is having the conversations with our partners, and being totally open about the situation, because they know more than we, right? And in a lot of cases, some of the bigger companies that sponsor our events and work with us, they've already made decisions which mean that they're not going to travel, certainly not going to participate in live events or even hybrid events, and seem to be supporting that for the remainder of this calendar year. So for us, any idea of doing something live this year is it's not going to happen. In terms of next year, I think we're just going to monitor it over the next couple of months. And
it does.
We have a.
Sorry. It does sound like you've got such strong relationships with your partners and sponsors that you have the ability to be a little bit nimble and flexible. Yeah,
we do, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've kind of come through this as well as we have, because we are small, and it has allowed us to move really quickly, make decisions really quickly, and we've made those decisions early. So, and that's been in everyone's benefit. I think that probably the really kind of I suppose that the worst part of this for much of our industry and our partners has been the uncertainty. And I think we've committed to our plans early. We've given them that degree of certainty, and whilst for virtual events aren't for everyone, I think what we've shown and what the industry as a kind of at large has shown is that virtual events do have a place. And I wasn't the biggest fan, I've got to say, of virtual events coming into this, and I've completely changed my views. I think we now understand what virtual events are, what they can do, what their limitations are, and I think we've as an industry done really well to hone this, and there's some fabulous events out there.
Yeah, it's great. We've all learned so much, haven't we?
Yeah, it has. It's been a massive learning curve.
I know you've got a small team, but how has it? What's it meant actually winning the May Virtual Event Award for you and your team?
Do you know what? We were delighted, and it's recognition from your peers, and that it doesn't get better than that. So we've been really delighted, because, as I said, these virtual events, there's a lot of work goes into them, a lot of work, and unless you're in it, you don't recognize how much work's involved in terms of the planning, the operational stuff, the resource. It's exhausting, and to pull it off and deliver a really strong event, and then to be recognized by your peers in the industry, it's fantastic. We love it.
Well, congratulations, Giles. Thanks very much for talking to me today, and best of luck with the future.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you.